Check it. 1. Think. Done it. 2. Shape shift. You can. 3. Free the feminine in you. 4. Refuse to dumb it down. 5. Recognize statecraft for the witchcraft it is. And this is stolen from Julia Raymond. 6. Edward Glisson said it. I repeat, opacity. Own it. 7. Platform yourself and know when to deplatform yourself, comrade. 8. Family is all who can think with you. You feel me? 9. Race matters. Who created it? Long live James Baldwin. 10. Read. Will ya? Educate your damn self.
Welcome to Black Manifesto, the 10 Commandments. Black Women Speak Out, a podcast series hosted by Nora, Chipaumire and myself, Pawlet Brookes. Black Manifesto brings together voices of black women from around the world as a collective conversation, making the invisible visible and addressing how we work to reshape a new world in which black women are seen and heard. The guests on this podcast share their reflections unapologetically, so please be aware of uses of strong language and references to personal struggles and traumas. In the first episode, Nora discusses the inspiration behind the creation of Black Manifesto and contextualizes the first commandment, think, darn it. So, think, darn it. What inspired the Black Manifesto?
Well, Pawlet and fellow comrades, women everywhere in the world, we have survived centuries of being the bottom of the bottomness. And 2020 rocks up and reminds us that nature is more powerful and that class still matters. And amidst all of this, the ranking of white men, black men, white women, children, dogs, and then black women at the bottom, I just, got all fired up. Like, what is going on? So all of this inspired the manifesto. I was just really, and I'm still super, super angry at the location of black womanhood in this space of society. So the manifesto is coming out of this space of like, let's think, what can we do? It's been centuries in this place, and yet we keep producing these children who who go on to shapeshift in the world. So yeah, COVID-19 is part of it. Black Lives Matter is part of it. But in general, the collapse and continued collapse of the art space, of the space for women to work and own and be in possession of their own wherewithal, of their own lives. These are some of the issues. I can go on and on, but really it's been centuries of women being, at the bottom of the bottom. And this year kind of helped me find the time to articulate some of my anger.
So let me take you back to your formative years. And at what point you did discover movement as an expressive medium? Because let's face, you're saying that women are the lowest of the low, black women, and you're looking at animals, when did you realize that you could use movement to express your discontent with where we are now?
Well, I think, I discovered movement as a liberatory idea when I was super young in the form of running. Physical exercise kind of helped me realize there was something in the body. There was some magic in the body that when I moved, when I ran, I could relieve myself of depression and other extremely negative feelings. I think this must have been my first realization of the power of physical activity. Maybe not as such as an expressive form, but as a way, as almost as medicine. So this is, very early high school. You start to, your teeth starts to bud, and all kinds of issues are happening. So yes, I discover the joy of movement and how much it freed me from myself. And fast forward years, so I've been running since I was 13 years old. Fast forward to, I'm like 24. I'm now in America. I'm still running and looking for something to kind of augment my running and my kind of lostness. Now I'm completely alienated and understanding what exile actually means. And I kind of just fall into a dance class in Oakland, California. And it's at that moment where I'm 24, I discovered that, from studying from kind of like a formal class, listening to stories about Martha Grahams and all these women who created the dance, that you could actually say something. So I put these two ideas together, the kind of medicinal quality that I was getting from just the sheer joy of movement, to kind of knowing that you could sculpt the gesture and then I could say something.
You've combined the movement and being free with your voice. So you're in high school and you're part of the debating club. And so you're free in terms of expression, in terms of your body, but you're combining these two things.
I was the best debater, bar none. I could just, that word filibuster. At some point, I became really, really, really good. Yes, so go ahead. I'm sorry to cut you.
So I'm just saying, so you take yourself to 1980 and Zimbabwe has gained independence. How did this period inform you of your understandings of resistance and the ultimate refusal to conform? You've got freedom. You want to be free, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And then, Zimbabwe has now gained independence. What does that mean?
My God, 1980 is such a formidable year and will go down in my personal history and, of course, in the history of Zimbabwe. First of all, Mr. Marley, Bob Nestor Marley, came to Zimbabwe. What can I say? There was something really in realizing that anything can happen. Here's this person you've only heard of as legend through radio, and he actually shows up and sings us into a brand new kind of era. So the power of art and the artist and a Pan-Africanist kind of perspective starts to really take a hold of me in this moment with Mr. Marley's arrival. And just the gesture of the blackness with the dreadlocks and the swagger of it all, it's just imprinted in my mind's eye.
That's that whole album, wasn't it? Uprising, and the whole thing about Africa unites because we're moving out of Babylon. It was just, that whole period was just. It was explosive, and when you still think about it now, it still takes you to a particular space.
And can we just make Mr. Marley a saint for having had the vision of articulating, kind of that moment in the 80s, what was going on. So I just wanted to say the second thing about 1980 is my aunties returning from the war, my freedom fighting aunties. Who returned, and something about that, their return, and hearing their stories of what war really was, that still shapes the way I think about revolution.
And those stories, Nora, they're not stories that we hear often enough, because it is still very much a masculine world and a masculine war. And when we tell the stories, we don't hear the stories of the women who were behind the scenes, keeping everything together.
There were so many women in our guerrilla warfare. Really, there were so many women involved in the front lines, in the back lines, in every aspect of the fighting. And so I have to say, I've experienced the loss and the fear of like, oh my goodness, somebody has crossed meaning they've crossed the border to go and fight. And they were all women. And the joy of like, oh, they've returned. And also the drama, the trauma they came back with, which we all still live with, I think, as Zimbabweans. The war veterans, the trauma they endured that they came back with. And you're right that the women's side of it is rarely spoken of, that war is seen as a very masculine activity. And one has to understand that in Africa, in Zimbabwe particularly, it was very much a woman's activity as well.
So given that, we need to take into consideration that it's important to have a safe space that allows Black women to be vulnerable without these preconceived conceptions, expectations placed on them, without their anger being misread in a negative way. Talk to me a little bit about that and how that's had an impact on your life.
Well, safe spaces like this platform that you are creating for us all, it just means that, when we are in a space where we feel loved, protected, our bodies relax, as people who use the body as the instrument to speak with, our bodies relax. And when we are in this relaxed state, we are the most productive. We don't have this flight or fight kind of situation. So our brains are ticking at the best rate possible. We are functioning on a cellular level, on the bone marrow level at our very best. So just I think on this kind of science, physical level, not so much this kind of hippie, like, oh, everything is safe, not really on that kind of level. But if you feel that you are safe, you are going to be thinking at your best. So, ideas come quicker, productivity is better. And so, yeah, I do think that safe spaces, we need to create them more and more. And who is better equipped to create these spaces other than Black women? Women who have that responsibility of making their homes safe for their children, safe for whatever life they nurture in there. So yeah, safe spaces are really, really crucial on all levels, in universities, in YMCAs. It's absolutely crucial that we create these safe spaces.
So over the years in your research and the things that you've been looking at in terms of safe space, technology seems to now be the thing, and the digital world is the place, and people for me are just vomiting out a whole host of stuff. How do we police that? How do we keep it safe? How do we ensure that Black women inside of that space can own it and be represented in the most positive way, rather than it being another window to capture Black women and then continue with the negative stereotypes?
Well, that's such an important question, and it is such a difficult one, because this big old wide world is like a Frankenstein, hasn't it? It's just grown out of control, and so the policing is almost near impossible. So I would just say, each individual is tasked with the responsibility to take care with what you put out there. Be mindful that this space is global. It's accessed by everybody, high and low. And is this the best way that you're representing yourself? I mean, I just think that we cannot really police this space, but we can police ourselves. And then we can also be mindful not to be so quick on the draw, like you see something out there and then you're responding in the most, exacerbating a situation. You don't have to participate if you don't have something important or helpful to say. It's just a junk space, this big old internet, social media. It's junk space. So let's be mindful what kind of junk we are also putting out there, and if we can reduce the noise level, let's do it.
In terms of clearing the space or having clarity about what we put out there, in your work you have an emphasis on collaboration. So how can we use this sort of metamorphosis to empower ourselves? How can we collaborate with a particular sort of mindset?
Well, here we are talking. You are in the UK, I'm in New York. One of the good things about this electronic universe that we all participate in is the world has become flat and has become really, really accessible. So, we can hunt each other out, those of us who have a need to hear each other out. I think, we can speak to China, we can speak to South Africa, we can speak to each other through this platform, we can seek each other out. That's one way of collaborating that I think the media world can support us with. Personally, I do think that, there were some laws in the 1800s that forbade the gathering of two or more Black people. Because apparently when it was two or more, we were plotting a revolution. If it was just one, you couldn't, plot a revolution by yourself. So you kind of see the power of the numbers that, if you gather in numbers, then you're supporting you're already in study. What you say helps me shape what I'm thinking, helps another shape. So we are already in a revolutionary place of study, of rethinking universes. So I'm really, really all for collaborations and corroborations. We can't do it by ourselves, because one cannot a revolution make. But, the power is in the numbers.
So going back to the powers within the numbers revolution and the sort of Bob Marley, activism, influence and deconstruction. How do we unapologetically incorporate these themes to navigate in the future?
Well, remain active, act, do, be, do. Don't just sit there, being like, this running commentary without being, so people like to talk. No, walk the walk, talk the talk, do. Participate. I really do believe in participation. But when I say that, I don't mean, just go run around and join the riots in the street. If that's not your ability, some of us are really very gifted in the writing and the sewing and the, whatever level we are able to participate in, we should do that, because the revolution has to unfold in multiple ways in all spaces. We talk about 1980, which was so important, but in some ways we were also underprepared. The regimes in colonialism before that had made sure that we were underprepared for what was next. So are we ready to be free? Do we know what we will do when we are free? So work on the preparation for that moment that we acquire this freedom that we keep chasing. And the influence, how do you influence? I personally feel like we should share. If you know something, share it, make it available to all the right people. We have all these technologies, particularly on my website, I would say, on how to think through a daily practice, physical practice, and it's free online. It's like, how can we teach and share? That's how I think of influence. Not just about buy this fashion, but,
So how do we undo the idea that knowledge is power? Because we ourselves are not sharing, we're not undoing, we're colluding and building different walls and different barriers. So what process do you think the arts plays in helping to deconstruct that so we can do, think, act, darn it?
We have so much work to do on this thing. I almost feel like a Chairman Mao and Stalin may have been right in these re-education farms. We all need to be in some kind of boot camp where we understand what are the structures that keep, the systematic racisms that are embedded in the structures that we live in politically, economically, socially. That's where we need to deconstruct. And until we understand that, we don't really know what ails us. we can't really have a decent conversation if you don't know what Frantz Fanon was on about, if you don't know what Kwame Nkrumah was on about, if you don't know what Stephen Biko was on about, if you don't know what Edward Glissant is saying. If we don't understand what is capital and how is it systematically kind of in place to kind of bamboozle us all. So I think that's where the deconstruction, for me, that's where the work is. We haven't done it. We don't know what W.E.B. Du Bois was talking about, the general strike in relationship to Black people. We just think Marcus Garvey is just named in some Black Uhuru song. Come on now, people. It behooves us to teach ourselves.
This is a manifesto and how we can live together. Is there a life lesson that you would like to share as we kickstart, the 10 commandments? What life lesson would you want to share?
I would say I was born in 1965, the year Rhodesia declared itself independent from the empire, from the UK. In 1980, Zimbabwe became independent. My entire life was about some oppressive system. I come from also a culture that has very little regard for the female. The female is equivalent to cow. The value of the female is equivalent to a cow. If your cow is not productive, then you can kill it or sell it. That's the same regard that the female has. So I would say the biggest thing for me has been to lose the fear. Just lose it on all fronts. Fear of being wrong, fear of being sent back to wherever you came from, fear of being sold because you're the unproductive cow, fear of disappointing yourself. Just lose the fear.
Yeah, losing that fear and gaining that confidence is a really interesting space or place particularly for young Black women. And just walking with confidence, it should be easy. It should be the easiest thing in the world. But actually, it's quite hard, isn't it?
It's very hard because everything around us tells us our skin is wrong, our hair is wrong, our body structures are wrong, the way we speak is wrong, and we can only hope to be, daycare workers, caregivers, mothers, in that realm of always taking care of someone else, but not ourselves.
So, Think Darn It is the start of the new manifesto. It's the start of a new step forward. Is there any new work that you're working on that will represent this new sort of charge around activism and Black women and just being who you are and being confident? Is anything new coming out that we should look forward to seeing?
Oh, absolutely. We're always working on something as the team and me, always as for myself, with myself. There is a digital matter kind of thing that I'm struggling with for ICA, the Institute of Contemporary Arts in University of Cape Town, that deals specifically with trying to go through a phenomenal poem by Victoria Santa Cruz, a Peruvian woman who we should add to our list of people we should understand. It's called Me Gritaron Negra. You call me black, or you call me nigger. Basically, it's trying to understand this kind of place of blackness and being female, and also trying to open our universities outside of the English-speaking world. That we have women who have fought and continue to fight in other languages. And the bigger work that I'm doing is an opera called Nehanda. It's an effort to bring some legal litigation against the empire. The British Empire, for all its historic crimes, is in the land between the Limpopo and Zambezi, which is now Zimbabwe.
Okay, on that note, I am going to round it up because I think what we can do is talk a little bit more about this. as we bring other guests to be part of the manifesto, we can talk about your work and how it impacts on them or not, and just also the direction of travel. So thank you, Nora. Look forward to Shape Shift It You Can.
Thank you so much. This was so fantastic.
Thank you for listening. You can read more about Black Manifesto in Black Ink, a new publication from Serendipity, which brings together international voices from the African and African Caribbean diaspora and Indigenous communities to discuss Black arts, heritage and cultural politics. In the next episode of Black Manifesto, Nora and I will be joined by Annabelle Gourdra, founder of FIAP, Martinique's live art festival, for the next commandment: Shapeshift, you can. The Black Manifesto podcast is sponsored by the National Education Union. This podcast was edited by Hannah Hethman and Julia Letts at Better Lemon Creative Audio, with research by Miss Thora Allison and Amy Grain. For further information and context to support your own learning, visit our Resources for Change page at serendipity-uk.com. Thank you.